We are being ruled by literally the tyranny of the minority. In states like Texas, where we have had radical gerrymandering so that only primaries matter, and where we've been chopped into a majority of Republican seats, and those Republican candidates and office holders believe that they only need to be held accountable to a vast minority of voters who are voting in primaries and deciding the outcomes of their elections. That's how we wind up where we are.
Republicans have never made this approach a secret. Strategist Karl Rove wrote about the GOP plan to take over state legislatures for the Wall Street Journal back in 2010, saying this, quote, "He who controls redistricting can control Congress." So let's discuss. Eric Holder, Mark Elias, and Sophia Lynn-Lakin still with us. Eric, we mentioned it before, the impact of gerrymandering. Help us really understand the consequences, what they've been.
Well, with gerrymandering, as Wendy Davis said, you're in a safe seat. And so you're concerned not about a general election, you're concerned about a primary challenge, which pushes you further and further to the right, and which helps explain why you see through states now, after the Dobbs decision, Republicans taking more and more extreme positions with regard to reproductive rights. It's all to fend off a challenger who might come in a primary session and say that you're not being sufficiently supportive of the Supreme Court and the anti-abortion decision. That's one practical consequence. And so one of the realities is, if you're concerned about that primary election, not the general election, cooperating with people across the aisle is seen as a sign of weakness. And that leads to gridlock, which leads to a lack of action by our legislatures, which leads to cynicism in the American people. And so, things that the American people are generally agreed upon, background checks, for instance, with regard to gun safety, even with regard to not overturning Roe versus Wade. Again, generally, people around the country did not want to see that happen. You can see Republican legislatures do those kinds of things inconsistent with the desires of their constituents and not suffer any political consequence. All of that is a function of and a result of partisan gerrymandering.
But, Sophia, in theory, both parties can try to create districts to benefit them. Is this fair to lay it out that way?
It's true that whoever is in power can control the reins of the redistricting process, and that's ultimately part of the issue. At stake, you have the fox guarding the hen house, so to speak. Politicians choosing their voters instead of the way it should be, where voters are choosing their politicians and representatives, people that will ultimately represent their communities. And we're seeing pretty dramatic impacts of that on both sides of the aisle when it comes to how it impacts voters of color, or the most marginalized voters in our communities. For the most part, gerrymandering hurts them across the board.
Mark, you've been suing over gerrymandered maps for months and months. What's the latest?
Yeah, so I've been suing for years and years. The latest is that we have two cases going before the U.S. Supreme Court, cases that Eric Holder and I and our teams have been working on. And both of them are really going to be important in the next term. The first is a case out of Alabama where the Supreme Court is reviewing a victory that we had, challenging the lack of a second Black Opportunity District. Alabama drew one seat that Black voters could elect their candidate of choice. We believed that it should be two. And a three-judge panel comprised of two Trump appointees and a Reagan appointee agreed with us. That case is now before the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's a very important case that they will decide regarding the scope of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The other case is the big case that you hear a lot of people talking about, and this fringe theory that Republicans are promoting called the independent state legislature theory. This is out of a case out of North Carolina where we were successful in striking down the map that the Republican legislature had drawn, which was an extreme partisan gerrymander. The state court there said that the state constitution prohibited partisan gerrymandering. And the Republicans have now brought this case to the U.S. Supreme Court on the theory that the state courts are not allowed to apply their state constitutions when looking at maps. If this was adopted, this could have dramatic impacts, not just in the area of gerrymandering, but in voting rights generally. There is no theory more closely aligned with the big lie and Donald Trump than the independent state legislature theory. It is the theory that John Eastman was peddling in the days leading up to January 6th.
You are scaring me, all three of you scaring us. This is really, really important information that we need to understand more and we need to care about more.